Okay, hey everybody, there's the camera. I know that I have said that I was going to make a longer video, probably for about 2 different days now. Well, this is it. This one's gonna be a long one, so warning you just now, if you don't like to listen to my boring voice for that long, well, turn it off. Also, oh wow, this looks like a second frame. It's not. It's really odd. Also, I said that this video would probably, or has the ability, or has the possibility to offend a bunch of people, both in and out of the LGBT community, and quite frankly, I don't give a damn. So, if you don't want to listen to that, tune out also. Okay. No offense to all of my LGB friends and all of my other friends who are under the vast transgender umbrella, but tonight we're going to get real about some problems that we face. So, just letting you know that. Also, for those of you who have sensitive ears, I'm not going to promise you that I'm not going to curse multiple times, because this particular topic really gets under my skin. So, alright. So what is it all about? Well, I'm here in Texas, Austin, to have my surgery that I have been consciously waiting for wow. And some degree or another since 1993, maybe even 92. I can't remember when I was in that. Oh my gosh. Okay, my neck is killing me. I hate this. Anyway, long time. So what, probably at least more than 20 years. So, anyway, and unconsciously, since probably 1970, when I was 4 years old. So, and that's exciting, and I love it, and I can't wait. But along this really long journey that I have had, there have been some awesome ups and some really incredible downs. And some of those downs, unfortunately, have been brought on by other members of the LGBT community, which is absolutely ridiculous. I can't, still to this day, cannot understand why a community, which is what we all should be, a family, that is already so incredibly marginalized by, and still, even today, incredibly marginalized by a lot of the population of this world, would continue to marginalize within itself by looking down or casting out or not choosing to understand or whatever other members within its community. It's fucking ridiculous. Sorry. Okay. That's number one. First swear word. Okay. Anyway. All right. So my particular video and my particular observations are going to stem from my experience, because I can't talk from anybody else's experience but mine. And I will tell you, well, first of all, I'm going to give you a history of the word, and then I'm going to tell you why that transgender no longer fits me. And I'm not going to be defined by that umbrella term anymore, because it's not that it's a bad term, it just no longer fits me. Too many people have come to assign a particular definition to it, which it was never intended to be, but it's okay that it's evolved to include a lot of other people. It just no longer includes me under its umbrella. So let's go over that, shall we? I made a couple of notes just to make sure that I've got my history correct, and you have to know that this is not just something that I decided to get on Bing and Wikipedia and whatever and research and write down a whole bunch of bullshit. I've been studying this topic for a long time. Not as long as some of my other friends. I think my friend Dominique probably studied this topic, since the 80s, right? But I was first introduced to it when I was at Utah State University. And up until then, I knew that there was something different about me for a long time. And I just wasn't quite sure exactly what it was. And then I got to Utah State University and I was cast, miraculously enough, I was cast in a play called Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, Jimmy Dean. For those of you who don't know that play, first of all, you should. It's an awesome play. Someday I plan on doing it at East Hollywood High. Just a heads up, Katrina. But in this play, it is told in both present day and past. Present and past. And in the past, there's this kind of magical, dreamlike quality to this idea that one of the characters feels like she had sexual relations with James Dean, and that her son is a direct descendant of James Dean, all that stuff. Well, it turns out that she actually had sexual relations with a friend who looked an awful lot like James Dean. And that's kind of where the twist starts. So I played in the past, in the dreamlike past, I was playing Joe, and Joe was the character that often gets mistaken for James Dean, and this other character's inability to remember it all correctly. And I think it's largely due to the revelation we receive, spoiler, just as we head into Act 2, or I think the second act after the intermission. Just before the intermission, it is revealed that the stranger that's in this cafe, there's this big reunion they're all having, and the stranger that has shown up at this cafe, this strange woman, and not strange as in strange as in unknown, not recognized woman, turns out her name is Joanne, and she used to be Joe. So I was cast as Joe. One of my fellow actors was cast as Joanne, and the director was pretty adamant. She was awesome this way. She was a stickler for accuracy and research. She said to both me and the girl who was playing Joanne, she said, "You guys need to research this." And at the time, I think she referred to it as a condition, but that's what everyone was referring to it as. I better plug in the phone because it's dying. That's okay. Luckily, I have a cord. Perfect. Okay. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. So she said you have to research this condition. And it was in, like I said, it was in like 92, possibly. This was before the internet was a thing. Like the only thing we had as far as internet was concerned was like text-based, like news groups, maybe. Not even that. Like really. Intranet stuff, I think, more than like it was there, but it was very skeletal, very basic. So my research led me to the library, and magazine articles, newspaper articles, medical documents, all of that stuff. And I remember reading about one woman in particular. Her name was Tula. Can't remember what her last name was. She was a supermodel. She was a Bond girl, gorgeous, happened to be transsexual, is what they were calling it back then, even in the 90s. I know transgender, you'll find out, was a term that was started long before that, but it hadn't quite entered the public consciousness yet, in a broad use way. So I read about Tula's story. I read about how she transitioned very young and nobody knew. She had kept it a secret, and then somebody in her family, I can't remember whether it was an actual sister or a sister-in-law or just even what she considered to be a very good friend, I can't remember, outed her, and she lost everything. She lost her career, she lost her then husband, she lost, I believe she had children at that point, adopted, of course, but she lost access to them. Anyway, so she lost all of it. And I remember reading about that and thinking, wow, this is me. But then I fought it because I, was interested in, at the time it wasn't looked at as normal. It was the subject of Jerry Springer. Like, he'd bring on these transsexual people, some of them genuine, I think, and some of them obviously not genuine. And that'd be the fodder of like shock value, and everybody was like, they'd laugh at them or whatever, and so I didn't want to be that. So I went on my merry way trying to be quote unquote normal, which wouldn't work eventually, and would culminate in me transitioning and living my life, and to the point where I'm at today, which is a topic for a much longer separate video, which we'll go over some other day. Okay, so let's talk about, so I've been studying it for a long time, and I am, when it comes to researching things, I'm a lot anal, I'm a lot obsessive compulsive, I'm a lot like a dog with a bone. I just go right after it, and I researched and read and searched online and all that other stuff, especially once I had was married and it was really becoming a problem. I did an awful lot of searches online, and back then, I didn't know the word transgender at all. The only word I knew was transsexual, because that's the word that I had researched went back in the 90s. So you would type in transsexual back in the early 2000s. Like, this was pre 2004, and I don't know if any of you are still familiar with what the internet was like pre 2004, but you'd get results that were not very nice, obviously, and you'd get results that looked like they would lead to information, then you'd click on them, and then your whole damn browser would explode with sex sites and porn sites and young girls and blah 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 blah, and it would just come up and you'd close, and another one would spring. 50 gajillion of them would spring up. By the time you were done, you were exhausted and didn't even want to try the search anymore. So, which led to some problems, because all of that stuff enters into your search history. And when I told my then wife at the time everything, in confidence, I don't want to go too far into this, but I mean, basically, I'll talk in depth another day, but let's just say that she became suspicious of things which the general public had kind of fed into the everything, news and TV shows, so why shouldn't she be concerned? And they did a search while I wasn't there on the computer and found all of these sites, and so she instantly became convinced that I was addicted to porn and that was what was leading to this. And yeah, it was yeah, horrible and hurtful and not very cool. And it wouldn't be until I found the word transgender many months later, almost probably a couple of years later, that I'd be able to do research and actually find, like, I didn't even find transgender first. I found Calpurnia Adams, because I watched a movie called Soldier's Girl, and it was about Calpurnia Adams, and I typed in the name Calpurnia Adams and went to her website and found a forum, and it was there that I finally got information that I needed without having to search through the garbage, to be quite honest. So anyway, so that's a little background into why I feel like I pretty much know what I'm talking about. Okay, and to be honest, anyone whose experience is specific to whatever label or whatever whatever word defines them, pretty much knows everything there is to know about that word and should not be questioned by people who are not defined by that word, plain and simple. Let me just put that out there right now. Okay, so let's get to the notes. Okay, so in order to understand transgender, and in order to understand the reasons that I am leaving it behind and embracing transsexual, you need to understand the history behind it, and that will probably make it fairly clear. So, way back before 1965, which is where the first official use of the term transgender starts, by the way, 1965. Prior to that, I believe it was 1904, maybe. I didn't write that one down because that was when they started using the word transvestite. And this was the first time they kind of tried to clarify a difference between gay and this new thing that they were seeing happen, which was what they believe were all gay men who had an attachment, I guess is the nicest way I can phrase it, to women's clothing. That they felt like they only either felt comfortable in women's clothing, or they felt sexually aroused in women's clothing, or it was the only way that they could function sexually, or even just in an everyday type of sense. So they started using the term transvestite, meaning that you trans or go beyond or change from the clothing or vestitures that would normally be associated with your gender to those of the opposite gender, so transvestite. And that would be used for a number of years in psychology and in other forms of medicine and culturally, to explain a lot of people who everyone felt fell under that category. It wouldn't be until 1965 when a doctor by the name of John F. Olivan would coin the term transgender, and he said in his work, he said that I should have written the quote down, but he said something along the lines of the term that they had used up to that point, which was transvestite, the transsexual, sorry, almost skipped a part. So transvestite was used for a while. Actually, okay. Back up. This is raw. So again, remember, I think it was prior to 1904, transvestite was used. And then in 1904, transsexual started being used, where that was when they started to say, oh, well, no, there's more to it than just altering the clothing. This was to define people who went beyond just wearing the other vestments or clothes of the other gender, and to those who felt so ingrained in the identity that they sought surgery. Yes, it was. And then in fact, in Germany, in 1904 was when the first official medical sex change was performed. Back then it was called sex change. So they started calling them transsexuals because they were transitioning not just the vestments, they were transitioning the sex, right? They were changing the sex. So that's where transsexual happened. Okay. So then now fast forward to 1965, and Dr. John F. Olivan says, what we've been referring to as transsexuals all this time, he coined the term to replace, let me say that again, he coined the term to replace transsexual. He called it transgender, because he felt that transsexual sexualized the process and made it seem made it seem like it was all about but sex, the act sex, right? And so people started thinking that transsexual was a perversion of some kind. So he said, look, it's not just about sex, it's about their identity, it's about their gender, who they are, gender. So they are transitioning their gender, not just their sex, the whole being, not just changing the genitalia or the sex organs, or as the society would see, some kind of sexual perversion, which, leave it to the dregs amongst us. Anyway, it was more encompassing than that. It was gender. So we replaced transsexual with transgender. Problem fixed. Not really, though, because very soon after that, almost immediately after that, of course, by 1969, Virginia Price started to define herself as different from the transsexual, as a transgenderal, because she said transgenderal is, I am that other gender, but I don't want to have the surgery. So I'm transgenderal, which means I am the gender that is opposite that I was assigned at birth, but I have no desire to change it surgically. I'm fine, right? So then, very quickly after that, in fact, almost every 5 years or so after that, transgender started to evolve. The term in 1974 evolved to mean, of course, that transsexual meant surgery, transgender meant no surgery. By 1980s, they added gender transient into transgender. By 1990s, that was where the umbrella term really started to take off, and we got a bunch of different identities added into the transgender umbrella term, which for me and the women who are like me started to become the point of a problematic distinction, because transgender started to embrace, which is not, don't get me wrong, it's not bad, but I'll tell you what the problem is in a moment. But transgender started to embrace all of these other terms. You could have transsexual under it, which was me and those like me who transgender was originally formed for. Then you added in gender nonconforming, gender non-binary, agender, drag, androgynous, all of these other identities within the transgender umbrella. And all of these other identities are not or not representative of the major plight the transsexuals face. Sorry. You two have all these other types, don't get me wrong, you have your societal problems that you face, and your bigotry, and your your discrimination that is put against you, and that is horrifying and horrible. But you're not a transsexual, and I'll tell you why that's important. Well, here's why it's important. So you have, sorry, I need to take a drink because my throat is getting. Okay. So, unfortunately, here's what happens when society gets involved in a terminology that has not been fully fleshed out and has not had the time to educate the society around those which are hearing it, which is a problem of the internet age. It just gets it out there and it goes like wildfire, right? But here's what happens. Transsexuals have a very different set of problems ahead of them than, say, a drag queen or a drag king or gender nonconforming. A transsexual, their identity is 100% the opposite of what they were born with. And I remember when I was still working at Equality Utah, and we had these, it had nothing to do with Equality Utah, but we had one of these little events up at the University of Utah, and I'm not going to name names because I don't want to pull people into it, but and it was supposed to be an open discussion and all that other stuff, and I remember people talking all about how awesome it is that they wish that gender didn't exist and that we didn't need to have gender neutral bathrooms or special bathrooms, that all bathrooms should be gender neutral or non-gender bathrooms. And I'm just like, hold on, that works fine for you, okay, but I am a woman and I want to use the women's bathroom, okay? I want to be gendered. I want pronouns to be correct. I want to have, I'll even go so far as to say I want some of the, I'm old-fashioned in my ideas. And I do want the experience of a man who wants to open the door for me, or, thinks I'm beautiful, wants to dance with, whatever. I want that. And I remember being kind of looked down on because of that. And actually somebody said, I'm so sorry for you. And I just wanted to say, well, fuck you. Don't be sorry for me. Just because you want a certain something, just because you are a certain something, it doesn't erase who I am or what I want. There's nothing fucking wrong with what I want to be, or what I am, rather, because it's not a want. See, this is what you all need to erase from your consciousness. My identity, my femininity, my womanhood is not a want or desire. It's what I am. Plain and simple. It's what I am, it's what I've always been. And so when I say to people, look, I'm here to get surgery to remove a deformity that I was born with. And people go, oh, I hate that you have to see it that way. Or, oh, that's so sad. I'm like, no, it's not fucking sad. It's a miracle. It's a miracle that I can have this surgery done. No less a miracle than people who have cleft palates who can get them fixed, or people who have artificial limbs now because we can do such a thing. That's exactly what this is. My identity, my inner person, my soul, if you believe that, which I do, is female, always has been. It will be into the eternities for those of us who believe in an afterlife. And my body was born with a defect, which I am having corrected medically. That's all there is to it. And just because you think that's sad doesn't erase the reality of it in any way, shape, or form. Let me see if I can draw an analogy. I love, so there's so much good about organizations like Affirmation, Mormons Building Bridges, Pride Center, Equality Utah, all of these organizations that are constantly working for the rights of the LGBT community. Sometimes they get it wrong. Sometimes they go after the rights, thinking that they're going after the rights of the majority and that everybody's going to be included, and they miss a minority. Sometimes it happens, okay? Case in point, I was walking around an Affirmation conference after a lot of it was during a break when people go from meeting to meeting to meeting kind of a thing, and I overheard some youngins, some young non-binary guys, which is awesome, by the way. I love that exists, don't get me wrong. But they were talking about how somebody in their group had brought up that gender does exist, and they said, no, it doesn't, gender doesn't exist, they don't understand that gender doesn't exist, it's just a social construct, and blah, blah, blah. And I just want to say, you know what? That's a little bit of bullshit. And maybe a lot of bullshit. And here's why. We used to think that there was gay and straight. Gay or straight, that's it. And essentially, bi was not even in there. You were either gay or you were straight. And then Kinsey found out that, oh, hey, there's this thing called a Kinsey scale. You could be like 90 some odd % straight or 90 some odd % gay. No one was 100% anything. And then all along that spectrum were other variations of that. You could even be like 50-50, which is where bi came in to play, right? But just because we discovered bisexuality does not erase straight people and gay people. Did you get that? It didn't erase their identities. We embraced the idea that there was bisexuality. That's awesome. But it didn't make gay people no longer gay. And it didn't make straight people no longer straight. That's ridiculous. Same thing with non-binary gender people. There's a scale we're starting to discover, right? And just because we have found that there are people who desire to be neither and are somewhere in between, or somewhere on this side of the spectrum or somewhere on that side of the spectrum, it does not erase the fact that gender still exists, that there are male and female, and that there are all these variations along the spectrum. I get your passion. I do. You finally find a place for yourself in this world, and you just want to celebrate it and go after it. Please be my guest. Do so. But be careful where you tread, that you don't step on those of us who have come before and who are continuing after. There are still people who feel very much, who are very much a gender that their body does not match. And it's not a thought process, not a feeling process. It's ingrained within us. And in many ways, it's a medical process. You can find some of this stuff out. So there's a reason that I kind of left intersex out of that group. Intersex people out of the transgender umbrella group when I named all those terminologies, because I wanted to talk about them separately, because intersex people are also kind of thinking that, hey, we don't really belong under the transgender umbrella. They're also, some of them are starting to think that it doesn't really define us, right? And in order to understand, intersex people are those who are, or were classically defined as people who you could, through either on-site examination see that they were born either without genitalia or with both genitalia, or even internally had a genitalia that was like hidden or missing or underdeveloped or whatever. So the reason they were called intersex is because you could genuinely define it through a medical procedure kind of a thing and look at things, and it was there and it was obvious. And transsexuals, I would say, have more in common with intersex people than we do with the rest of the transgender umbrella. We just do. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the fact that the transgender umbrella has now come to encompass an awful lot of people. Hallelujah. I hope you guys are awesome. You're being taken care of, and you know that everybody loves you. But once again, it seems like this has happened throughout the history of the term. Once again, transsexuals, those people whose mental health depends on the fact that they are able to transition and start living wholeheartedly as the gender that they were meant to be. And whether that means not all the way to like bottom surgery or top surgery, whether that just means the taking of hormones or whatever, there's a difference. And I would like to posit a controversial point here, that if the surgery was universally accessible, so like there was no money problems, the surgery was just provided. If the surgery was universally acceptable, and if the results were good enough, like they didn't have to be perfect, but they were good enough for the trans men as they are for the trans women, and vice versa, and all of that stuff, and top surgery and all of that. If, in fact, let's go one step further. I will tell you right now that if you approached a transsexual person and you gave them the ideal circumstances and said, if I could give you a pill, so you don't have to go through the scariness of surgery, if I could give you a pill, and that pill would transition your body to be fully in line with your identity, undistinguishably male, undistinguishably female, would you take the pill? 100%, I'm going to say, 100% of all transsexuals would say yes. Because that's at the heart of it. And there's nothing at all wrong with that. And if you or your group or whatever thinks that's sad, or that there is something wrong with that, well then you need to check yourself. Back the fuck up and understand what you're doing to women like me. And this is what's happening. So even inadvertently, whether you mean to do this or not, and most of the time I would hope that none of you mean to do this, but every time you put it out there into the community consciousness, whether it's through interviews on radio or on TV or YouTube, or a blog post that you make, or at school when you say it, or in the workforce when you say it, anytime you put that out there into the community consciousness that, hey, this transgender thing, it's all about exploration, it's all about kind of, I can be who I want today, tomorrow, in the future, in the past, blah, 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 blah. You are promoting the idea within the socially backward community, the community of cis people who don't quite understand it and who are still thinking that, oh, it's all just a choice type of thing. You are promoting the idea within their mind that, yeah, it's just a choice, that a transsexual doesn't have to have surgery, because look at all these other people who don't have to have surgery. Why can't you just be like them? Right? Whether you mean to or not, that's what's happening. And you owe it to women like me who are dying every day in this country and around the world. You owe it to us to clarify and say that yes, there are people out there whose identity is called into question every day because of who I am or who my friends are or whatever. Not me in particular, but I'm talking those other people. And that's not fair and it's not right. Because the transsexuals amongst us are suffering day in and day out because they don't have access to surgery, or they don't have access to hormones, or they can't. Every year in November, which is Transgender Awareness Month, I attend a TDOR, Transgender Day of Remembrance, where we light candles for those amongst us who have been killed by other people because they didn't have a choice. Because they couldn't turn it on or off. Because they couldn't be one thing one day and one thing another. And because other people who are looking for an excuse to hate are given carte blanche to do so. Because they can point, whether rightfully or not, they can point to these other instances and say, see? Then you must be tricking me, and if you're tricking me, well then I don't like that and you deserve to die, and they kill them. And it happens every goddamn day. And I see it still happening in major media outlets. It's why I don't watch Bill Maher anymore. Because Bill Maher thinks it's okay during an episode to get up there and make fun of Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn Jenner. And he gets on there and he goes, I can't even remember the joke, it was so offensive, but he's talking about how Caitlyn Jenner's wife or something was talking about how, I can't remember, but he brought up Bruce. He said maybe she should ask him, and Bruce can tell her, or he called Caitlyn a he, and he thinks that's funny, and people laugh. Meanwhile, another transgender person dies, or another transsexual woman dies because somebody sees that joke and says, see, you're pretending to be a woman. So I stopped watching Bill Maher. It's also why I refuse to watch any film or TV episode or any of it that comes out of Hollywood that casts a cis person in a transsexual role. Because in reality, and this is another part I hate, because African Americans out there tend to like all of these minority groups who have fought for their rights. Feminists, African Americans, other minority groups look at transsexuals and say, your experience is nothing like my experience. You don't experience the pain that I did. We are killed every day, today, in this country, and sometimes by people like you. Don't you dare tell me that we don't experience the same prejudices that you did. It's why putting a cis person in a transsexual role is exactly the same as doing blackface. Exactly the same. And I will not support a Hollywood who continues to minimalize or disenfranchise transsexual women like me because they think that they're doing a favor to the transsexual community. Because they think that, oh, you poor trans people, I'm going to bring the spotlight onto your problems in this world by casting a star in the role, because that will bring more asses to the seats. Well, I gotta tell you something. Put the star in a supporting role. Case in point, Trans America, I think was the name of this show, the movie. Felicity Huffman. Why couldn't she have played the psychologist? Or the mom? Or one of the friends along the way? Why did she have to play the trans person? And you can't look me in the eye, which you can't right now, but you can't watch this video and say to yourself, well, there's just not enough trans talent in the world, because that's bullshit. Hey, as long as I'm not working, as long as I'm not working as an actor in the industry, then you have failed in your job. And that's not just about me. Any transsexual actor out there, male or female, as long as they're not working and you're using a cis person, you should be held accountable. And people should boycott your movies. And they should do the same thing they did to you now that they did to you back in the 60s and the 50s and the 70s, when you had people playing in blackface and brownface and all that other stuff. They should start boycotting your films and your TV shows and your streaming services. I'm looking at you, Transparent. I don't give a shit that you have some transsexual on as a consultant and you're saying, oh no, but we're listening to, or you have some director whose parent or family member is transsexual and, oh no, but I'm talking to, and it doesn't fucking matter. The more you do that, the more you put cis people in those roles, the more you marginalize the real transsexuals and say that A, there's not many of them out there, and B, when people see those roles and they go, oh, well, there's a cis woman playing that trans woman role, because obviously they couldn't find a trans woman that looks female enough to be feminine enough for that role, or they use a man in a trans woman role when they want to exemplify the fact that they don't pass, so that people in the audience can go, oh, well, obviously that's a man. And I want to say bravo to Netflix for a few of the shows that you've done, but you're starting to fall into that same trap now. Orange is the New Black, awesome show. Sense8, awesome show. But now you're starting to throw cis people in and trans people under the bus, and it's not acceptable. And you know what? It's not even an excuse to say that trans actors are not good enough. You know why they're not good enough? Because you haven't given them enough experience. Put them in front of the camera as often as you put a cis person, and they will smoke them, I guarantee it. So I've gone on, but I don't think I'm done, because there's a lot I wanted to talk about and I don't know. But the point is, I love you, Transgender Umbrella. I love all the people that are under it, but do not forget the transsexuals amongst you. do not throw them under the bus simply because you're excited about achieving your rights and your identification and your place in this society, which is so willing to kill those amongst us who people are not watching out for, who are so eager to kill those amongst us who are ignored. Okay. One last little note, or a couple of last little notes on terminology. I know that there's this push towards non-terms, and that's, sorry, just as bad. A friend of mine, dear friend of mine, said to me one day, well, aren't we all just queer? Like, can't we just use queer? Why do we have to have why aren't we all just queer? And I'm like, well, because I'm not queer. Queer has two distinct qualities about it. Queer is either inexorably tied up with gay, because people think queer, gay, blah, 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 interchangeable. Or queer is different or unusual. I'm neither. I'm not gay. I mean, lately I've started to question whether or not I might be pan, but by and large I love men. There's really only been one woman that I've ever loved enough to have a continuous sexual relationship with. By and large, I love men. So I'm not gay. And I sure as hell am offended by the fact that you would say I'm strange or different or weird. Because all I ever wanted to be was the woman that I was meant to be. Through and through. Now, another quick note. And this is to all you gay men and lesbians, and especially like lesbian feminists and possibly gay misogynists, which is what I'm going to refer to you as, because here's the deal. If you are dating someone and you are attracted to them and you're starting to love them and they reveal to you, or they say to you, oh, by the way, you need to know this about me. I'm a transsexual. I was born without the right plumbing, whatever. And you leave them? Or worse, you beat them and then leave them? Or ostracize them and then leave them? Then you're a fucker. Plain and simple. You should be ostracized. You should be chucked out of the community altogether. There's no place for that. If you love someone and they confide in you something that they tell no one else, and you piss in their face like that, I want nothing to do with you. And the LGBT community, by and large, should have nothing to do with you. I've had way too many sisters in this world, trans women who are beautiful inside and out, be dumped by feminist Nazi lesbians who say, you're not a real woman. And same thing goes for you men, gay men, who find out that your partner is a trans man and you go, oh, ooh, yeah, no. You're a stain on everything LGBT. And that goes for whoever it was, I can't remember who it was, who during the Prop 8 protest when they were seeking to get it overturned down there in California, and all the trans people showed up as a sign of solidarity and support, and the head of the HRC at that time turned around to them and said, "You guys need to take your signs and go home because marriage isn't about you." Oh my God. The things we do to each other. Anyway, there you have it. That's my Trans 101 in a nutshell. And there's, I'm sure, some stuff that I have left out, but at the heart, I think I covered it all. And I just want to say in closing that we cannot afford to forget our history in order to rewrite it to suit our own sense of value, which has happened. I get it. You find a place where you belong and you just want to explode with this purpose and fight for your identity. But you can't forget that there were hundreds upon thousands of us who have come before you. Do not ever, my advice to anyone out there in this community, do not ever lay claim to being the first of anything. If the public wants to say that about you, or the news wants to say that about you, they can do that, but don't you ever buy into that, because chances are you're far from being the first. I hate to destroy your sense of self-worth, but in a community that's been around for, well, publicly historically, at least 100 some odd years, and thousands of years prior to that, where we just kind of ignore that history, chances are you're definitely not the first. And that's okay. Kindly look at the reporter or whoever it is that's saying that to you and say, that's sweet of you to say, but there are lots of people who came before me, and I'm sure I'm not the first. You are not going to lose any skin off your nose for that. Humility is a good thing to have. Okay? All right, so that's my long video. Oh wow, it's not as long as some of my others have been. So I'm gonna stop there because I'm kind of still hungry. Oh God, my neck hurts. I'm about 24 hours away from surgery. It's Sunday night and my watch is getting charged. So it's Sunday night at what time? It's Sunday night at, I can't pull it up. I don't know what time it is, but 24 hours would take me to Monday night, and then 5:30 in the morning. Tuesday, I report to the surgical center. By 7:30, I go under. And by 3 or 4, whatever hours later, by later on in that afternoon, I'm going to wake up, and I'm going to be a new me. And when I wake up, I'm going to record the time. Somehow, I'll ask a nurse or something to record the time. And that will officially be my new birthday. Not my new birthday, because I still have the old one. My second birthday. And then I'll text that out or message that out or whatever, and then you people who are into all of the different kinds of astrology, you can tell me what my new signs are and all of that. And what moon is. That'll be lots to discover. And I do hope to see you all on the other side. Surgery is still surgery. And I don't want to think about the stuff that could happen, but let me just say right now that I love you all. That I love my Kira immensely. I'll never, ever, ever change that. I love my new family in San Francisco. My new mom, who's actually my old mom. my new sister, Amber, who's actually my new sister, my half-sister, my half-brother, Ben, and even my old sisters, Jen, Melinda, and my old mom, and my old dad. I love everybody that's ever touched my life, whether they've left it now or they're still there. I love my ex, and all of her family. I love everybody that I've met along the way, good and bad. And I want you all to know that regardless, you have affected me, you have shaped me, you have changed me in ways that you will never, ever fully understand. Thank you. I love all my students, oh my God. All my students throughout the years. My adopted son, Electra, and many, many others. Maggie and Alyssa, and oh my gosh, I could go on and on and on, you guys. Y'all know who you are. So, I'm going to be seeing you again tomorrow. I'm going to make one more video post before I go to bed and get ready to wake up at 5:30, and then I'll make another post on Tuesday when I'm out and up, hopefully. But until then, stay strong, stay loving, stay aware, and stay supportive.